Welcome to today's programming tutorial. First thing that you want to do is grab that link below this video to get to this project, and you want to absolutely remix. Now, if you don't see that remix button, that's because you need to sign in, but be sure that you hit this remix to make a copy that you can work with. What you'll notice is this is a similar game to one you've probably seen before. You have someone who's definitely not Pac-Man, and then you have someone who's not a ghost, and you have some goal you're trying to get to. So this player here, not Pac-Man, his brain says when the green flag is clicked, he's going to keep moving until he touches that cake. That he's got this one-track mind. He's going to go touch that cake, and he's not going to give up until he gets there. Now, your first task is I need you to adjust his code, add some code in here, because right now he only listens to the up arrow. That down arrow does nothing, left arrow does nothing, right arrow does nothing. So right now you can only move up. So don't forget our trick where you can go right click and duplicate. And then be very careful because you want to make sure that this, that's bad. You do not want that inside of the other if statement. You want it after the if statement, but still inside of the forever loop. And then you just have to make some changes about what arrow and what direction he's facing. So pause the video and take a second to code his movement and then test him to make sure you can move him in all directions. Now, special commercial break, if you are programming on an iPad and you don't have a keyboard, then you will have to take a different approach, and you want basically two things. You have a lot less code. You want to tell him to, in that loop, point towards the mouse pointer and move 10 steps. So if you are an iPad programmer, you have a lot less code to write. So pause that video and make sure that his movement works, and then we will add more. Okay, and so welcome back. Give him a test drive. Make sure you can press the right arrow, the down arrow, the left arrow, and the up arrow, and he responds appropriately. Now, this is the easiest game ever at this moment. Now, we also want to be sure that he gives up or stops moving when he touches that cake. So I want you to go to your looks block, and we are looking to switch the backdrop, and you have a party backdrop. Now this, don't forget how these loops work. This repeat loop keeps him moving, keeps him moving, keeps him moving. And then at some point when it's all said and done, because he only keeps repeating until he's touching that cake, and then once he's touching that cake, he can escape from that loop, move on with his life, and go party. So again, this is absolutely the easiest game that has ever existed because perfect. So we need to make this a little more complicated, and our mission is to make those walls actually work. So we have never dealt with running into walls before. To do this, basically, this is weird logic, but we are going to, every time he takes some steps forward, we're going to say, wait a minute, did you run into the wall? And then we're going to make him take steps backwards when he touched the wall. So we're going to let him actually run into the wall and then back him up out of the wall is what is our mission. But I'm going to be very lazy. I don't want to write that code 4 times. So let's try something new. Over here in the very bottom, my blocks, which looks like pink bubblegum, this will allow us to create our own block. So all these blocks we've used before already were part of Scratch, like point in the direction, move 10 steps, all those already existed, and the computer knew what those meant. So what we're going to do now is we are going to make our own block. We get to give it a name, so let's call this hit wall ? So this is going to be a block that says, hey, did you run into a wall? Now, it puts it right in the way, but I'm going to move him over here to the right. And basically, I get to tell the computer what this block means. Let's go over to Control, and we want to ask a question. So we're going to grab this kind of dinosaur mouth and say, if, and then I want to know, are you touching a wall? And then I'm going to tell you what to do when you said yes. And to determine whether we're touching a wall, these walls are not sprites, they're just part of the backdrop. So I'm going to cheat and use a sensing block that we have never used before. So if I go to sensing, we have used this touching block before to see if you're touching a different sprite. But what we want to do now is borrow this one. I want to know if our player is touching that blue color. So I made all the walls the same color on purpose so that I can just say, well, if you're touching that blue color, then you're touching a wall. And this is a little strange. When I put that in there, I need to click on the color in the block. And then if you look down towards the bottom, there's this eyedropper. And if I click that, then I have an option to go over here and pick what color I'm talking about from the stage. So I will just hover over that blue. It doesn't matter which wall you hover over, but just make sure you're on the blue and you click and it will pick that color. So now I can say, well, if you are touching that blue color, that means you've touched a wall. And I will tell you to back up. Now, we had him move forward by 8 steps. So I'm going to tell him to move backwards 8 steps. And to move him backwards, I'm going to say -8. So back up exactly as far as you went forward. Look at that. You have created your own block. Now, the only thing is this block right here, you created it and we have never used it. So if I were to hit run right now, it seems really silly that I wrote all that code, but he still walks through walls. But that's all right. He's walking through walls because I'm never asking him, did you hit a wall? So let's go down to bubblegum pink down here. And this block, now I can use it like it's any other block. So what we want to do is we are going to take that and put it right after any time that you moved forward. Anytime you move forward, I'm going to say, okay, you move forward, but wait a minute, did you hit a wall? And so this is a very strange thing. Basically, it's a beautiful way to be lazy because I don't want to have to take this and put that code in there 4 times. So basically, when the computer's reading this, when it touches move 8 steps, he moves 8 steps. When the computer gets to this point, it will teleport over here, do this, and come back. And so basically, I got to reuse this code 4 times because it'll come over here and do it and come back. And so sometimes being lazy is beautiful. I don't have to write that code 4 times. I can just reuse it. So let's do this. Pause that video and make sure that you have your hit wall block and that you have placed it every time that you moved 8 steps. Now, if you're an iPad person, you only had 1 move 8 steps, so you just attach it to the bottom of that and you should be okay. And so also be sure you test your code out, give him a run, make sure he cannot walk through walls. Now, sometimes he gets a little stuck in a wall, you have to back out of it. That's all right. That's all right. And so he cannot walk through a wall. And so now this becomes a little more of a real game because you have to, and his hat is kind of a problem too. Sometimes his hat gets stuck in a wall. Okay, so we almost have a real game. The only thing is that this enemy over here is kind of not so useful because he's doing this awesome job guarding that spot, but he doesn't really do anything. So what we need to do is add some code to say, wait a minute, what if I'm touching that enemy? So I would say that I only care about touching that enemy until I get to the cake. So we're going to borrow this loop and put some more things in this repeat block because that's another thing that only matters until I touch the cake. Once I touch the cake, I can quit asking that question. So it's going to be very similar to the if statements about the arrows, except for I just want to know if I'm touching the enemy. So let's go to control and I'm going to grab another if. Now the only tricky thing is you want to be sure that this if statement goes inside the repeat loop but not inside the other ifs. So here's the tricky part. I just need to tack this on kind of in this sequence of ifs. So what the easiest way to do this is I'm going to pick up all my if statements, take them out of the repeat, attach it to that if statement, and then put all that back in the sandwich. So again, basically you're almost interviewing the player over and over and over again. Okay, you're not touching the cake, so are you touching the enemy? Are you pressing up? Are you pressing down? Are you do-do-do-do? And so you just ask these questions over and over and over and over again. So here we go. We'll go to our sensing and we will say, if you are touching jellyfish, then what I want to do is I want to take him back to where he started. So you kind of have to try again. So it will teleport him back to the beginning. To do that, I need to know where that beginning is so I can pick him up. This is my favorite trick. I'm going to go put him right there. Once I let him down and I have him exactly where I want him, I can see his position here, X and Y, but I can also go grab this go to block, has those numbers already filled in. So I can say, go back there. So now look how cool this is. Now my enemy serves some purpose. Nice. And if I can escape that enemy, whoop, bad driver, awesome. So again, over and over and over and again, we're just asking this 5 questions. Are you touching that fish? Are you pressing up? Are you pressing down? Him to him to him to him to. So tons of questions over and over and over again, and I love it. If you're feeling extra fancy, you could spice up what happens when he touches the enemy. So you could, of course, play a sound. Here's a little code that you might try out if you want some cool effect like this. Something like that. When he gets hit, you have some sound effects, you have some movement, you have some color effects. If you're feeling fancy, try that out and see if you can make an awesome hit effect when he hits the enemy. So you have a functioning game. Congratulations. One other extra challenge, if you want some extra credit in addition to making him animate when he hits the enemy, you have space for another enemy here. So you can, and of course you can customize sounds and colors and all that type of stuff all the time. But if you wanted to add in another enemy, you could do that as well. And cheat off of this enemy, if you click on his brain, you can see his brain is really pretty simple, and it uses a block that we've actually never really used before, where you can say, if I'm on the edge, then I bounce. So take a second to make this game feel more like your own and customize it and create whatever you can dream up.